right. Well, my clock says it's 8:31 in Pacific. Seems like a good time. People will obviously continue to come in and maybe miss a bit of the introduction, but they'll get the meat of it. So thank you all for joining us so much, from taking time out of your busy lives. Clearly, the MarTech industry is in one of the biggest shifts that we've seen probably since SaaS. Uh, Possibly since the advent of digital marketing. On one hand, the need for sales and marketing alignment is now at an all-time high in terms of necessity, and with all the technology that we have, and in particular case for revenue marketing automation, intent signals and ABM has opened up a whole new path for marketers to think about and bring into their framework and how to engage with customers and track their engagement. And then, of course, on top of that, we have the ever-present AI that is changing everything. And I really do believe that AI will impact everything we do in marketing. So there's never been a more exciting time for MarTech. And that means for marketers everywhere, buckle up. It's going to get exciting. And everybody should be diving in and thinking about how this changes our roles and how we can optimize our engagement with our prospects and customers based on this new technology, and stay on top of our game, right? So that's what we're here to talk about today. We have an excellent guest with us who really is on top of all the new technology and advances and talking with customers on how to make the most out of them. Before I go introductions, I'll do the quick sort of housekeeping, which is super brief. We will be taking questions. We love questions. We want to hear your questions and be engaging and interactive. So please add them to the chat whenever you have them. We'll try to get to them in real time, but if not, we'll also answer questions at the end of the sort of the presentation. And of course, there will be a recorded version of this as usual. Let me start with myself before I introduce Peter. I am Jeff Day. I am the CMO of Act On Marketing, a revenue marketing automation platform. And I have been in tech for a long, long time. I started out as an engineer at Intel for 7, 8 years. And then, as I say, I kind of fell backwards into marketing and have been loving it ever since. 20 plus years in tech, SaaS, all B2B, and most of it in sort of the marketing technology space. But it's not about me. It's about Peter. I am very excited to have with us today Peter O'Neill, a longtime industry veteran and analyst, one of the best analysts I've ever worked with. He has both been on the practitioner side and the analyst side for a long time, working at companies like Ford and HP. And then after that, as a leading analyst for Meta Group and for Forrester for a number of years before moving into what he is doing today, which he will introduce for us and can do a much better job than I can. But he really knows his space. And as we were talking, once you've been in the market for over 20 years, us veterans just say, oh, it's 20 plus years. We don't really need to count the extra ones. So with that, Peter, thank you for joining us today. And we're excited to hear about your research and your presentation.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you. And thank you very much for the invitation. Dear listeners and watchers and viewers, and thank you very much for joining the webinar or watching the webinar. And I hope we'll provide you with some very useful, interesting information, just to enhance the sort of background description for myself. My last real job, I suppose, was being research director at Forrester Research. 2012, they asked me to start a group focused on B2B marketing, a group of analysts. And so I built up a group of about 10, 11 analysts then over the next 5 years, providing research, insights, and consulting around the topic of B2B marketing. And through that time, this whole idea of marketing automation really started to gather a lot of momentum, and was heavily discussed. I mean, I remember being in marketing when there was no such thing as marketing automation, but that's a long time ago at HP. Left Forrester in 2017 and started to work on an independent basis. I've got a few business partners you can see listed behind me. And with Research in Action, I tend to do 5 or 6 vendor selection matrix reports each year. And such a report is actually a focus on one certain marketing automation process or marketing process and the software vendors involved in that process. And basically we go to market and do a survey of marketers and business people on that topic, get some idea of the trends and challenges and preferences around that topic in the marketplace. And we also try to collect information in the same survey about the vendors that are in that space and what the market thinks about those vendors. So that's the sort of process of putting together this project and the report that we're going to talk about today. And in fact, I remember way back at Forrester, I think 2012, we started our first Forrester Wave in this area. And we had a great debate internally, should we do a Forrester Wave on marketing automation platforms, which was the term being used at that time for the Marketos and Eloquas and Actons. You were still there, already there at that time. And we actually tried to avoid it because that felt to us a little bit too generic as a term. And we could see what was going to happen, that there were going to be at some point 12,000 different vendors selling some element of marketing automation into the marketplace, which is the status we have now in 2025. So we didn't call them marketing automation platforms. We did a wave on what we called leads to revenue management, which was the term that we introduced and we profiled and we talked about a long time. And when I, as a research director at Research in Action, wanted to do the same thing, I think the first time was 2018, I decided to use the term marketing lead management to understand what was going on there and came up with the trends around that topic. Last year, we did the same thing and did a survey around this topic. And if we can go on to the next slide, please, we'll show one of the first results of the survey we did, and we asked very directly, how do you feel about your current marketing automation platform? Use the term because we know that that's the way that most companies, vendors, and the most users sort of think of their base marketing platform. And this is the result. And it's a frightening result because at the end of the day, we're talking here that really only 14% of the companies we asked, 1,000 companies around the world, are satisfied with their current marketing automation platform status. Everybody else, 87% or so, are now actually about to or are reassessing their platform and are ready to change, ready to develop, ready to look for something else. And you can see the different breakdowns here. And we have actually 2 surveys parallel here. The 2024 was the one we're going to talk about primarily, but we did the same thing 2 years prior as well. And so you can see some changes within those 2 surveys. So the role of marketing automation as a platform is already quite precarious in most areas. And I would get feedback from many companies that there are so many things now missing in the system that they bought maybe 10 years ago, maybe even just 5 years ago. Things like omni-channel personalization, things like campaign, workflow management, some element of predictive content, some element of analytics around the revenues, around the campaigns, around optimizing the campaigns, all stuff like that. And so a lot of current operators of marketing automation platforms are ready to address that challenge and are considering reinvesting in something new. And it's a similar idea around account-based marketing. So if we look at the way that companies are now thinking about their account-based marketing platforms, we have a similar picture. Now, I admit that at the bottom of the slide, it says that the end count is 1,000, but that's probably not true. It was probably more like 700 or so out of the 1,000 companies we interviewed, because not everybody is doing account-based marketing in their organizations. But we have the sort of similar status here. That really only 15% are satisfied with their current ABM platform, and the rest are basically in the reassessment phase and trying to think about maybe they need a better technology platform, some better solutions. And I think ABM, especially, this is probably also due to the fact that many companies are developing a different type of ABM over time. They start with a large base of ABM systems and just industry focus and things like that, and then get very focused on specific accounts, which was the whole point of ABM programs. So there's a progression over time anyway that reflects that. So things are changing, as Jeff alluded to a few moments ago. And what's going on? Well, I've tried to put it down on this slide as 5 very major changes, I think, that are affecting marketing and the discipline of marketing. In the past, I remember when I was in marketing at HP, but even then, in the first sort of 10 years when I was working as an analyst, I mean, the role of marketing, to be honest, to be very direct, the role of marketing was to serve sales. And then that's changing, and that's going to have to change very much because of the way that buyers and customers now are expecting to be served with information as they do their research online and are looking around. And so from serving sales, the role is moving to actually serving the customer and serving the buyers with information that they need at specific times during their life cycle, the buyers or the customer's life cycle. Marketers used to be basically just feeding the funnel, providing information, leads to sales, and letting them do the work afterwards. And maybe in the background, doing some brand or corporate marketing, just to sort of make sure that the recognition factor was there as well, to help salespeople be successful and help buyers then to understand, recognize the companies they were dealing with or talking to. Because remember, most of the time, only around 5% of potential buyers are in market, are in the process of deciding to invest in something. The rest of the time they may buy, but it's going to be next year, or it was last year, whatever. So in market is a very important process. So from funnel feeding to life cycle marketing is another dramatic change. The people we're dealing with, in terms of their personality, their expectations, their preferences, is changing quite dramatically. I'm a baby boomer, I think, just about. But these days, what we would normally find are millennials, or even into the next phase, and their preferences are quite different to the way that we used to work with salespeople or have face-to-face meetings or fly across the road or across the country to meet up and to do things face-to-face. Of course, marketing has become quite a business discipline now. There's that famous saying about the 50%. I can't remember who it was. But nowadays, the attribution is becoming quite a science in itself. There are quite a lot of good solutions out there to help marketers to attribute the work that they do to business success, to revenue success. And that's becoming quite an important process in itself within marketing. Which takes us then to the last point, and that is that the marketing strategy, the idea of image and expectations and branding and so on, is now becoming quite more sophisticated, and the analytics and the data that marketers are now working with and working on is becoming very extensive. And if any marketers are expanding their departments these days, it's usually trying to recruit data scientists and people who understand data, as well as AI, of course, which is the new low-hanging fruit, or whatever the right term would be.
That's
So
so
Jeff,
funny, Peter.
smiling a bit about these points. I hope you agree.
Totally agree. And in fact, we were talking to our data scientist on the engineering side just yesterday, and we were saying, "Hey, we've got these projects over in marketing that we'd really love your help with." And he was super excited to dive in. He was like, "Oh, this is really meaningful." You know, the biggest thing that I take away from this, and I feel in my own practicing life as head of marketing, um, is this alignment to the buyer journey that you talk about, right? While we have always tried to do that, it feels more and more important today because they're getting so much more information and doing so much more of their vendor research before they even, raise their hand to come talk to us. So we are fully aligned to the buyer journey. We're using all of the behavioral analytics and intent signals that we can get our hands on to understand who is engaging with us around, what are the topics that they're interested in, they're trying to answer at any given time, and aligning with that just to bring them in in hopes that they at some point say, okay, I opt in, here's my name and email number, email address and phone number, and please reach out to me. Because everybody knows that as soon as you give that to a vendor, we're going to reach out to them, right? So it really is like, how much can we help them get all of the information they need before they then sign up? And that feels like it's changed pretty significant for me over the last 10 years.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I remember well way back when we started our first Forrester Waves, or 212, 211, 213, working together with companies like Marketo and Eloqua and so on about designing their products and putting them together. Those companies now become part of much larger organizations. But the changes we're talking here is almost the difference between combustion engine cars, petrol with gearboxes and so on, and electric cars.
Yeah.
And so a lot of solutions in the old days were built for the petrol cars, and they really are not really suitable anymore, have the wrong functionality for electric cars. And
Yep.
there's a good analogy there, I think, that just to understand difficulties some of those vendors are having and difficulties their customers are having now trying to adjust with older product.
Yeah.
So we did make one big change when we did this survey. The 2022 survey was titled Marketing Lead Management then, but I went into myself for the 2024 survey and thought I need to use a different title because I think things have moved on in the meantime. And so I debated a long time about it. I had lots of discussions with the marketers I work with, but also with vendor executives about the title. I found Rev Ops, or revenue operations, just too operational, too scientific. Revenue management was suggested by many, but I found that probably too sales orientated. So I picked revenue marketing as the term I would like to use in the survey. Revenue marketing automation. Primarily because my focus is always about talking about marketing and I'm talking to marketing organizations. And I defined in the survey that we did revenue marketing, and I'll just read it out here. To all of the respondents in the survey, we said, we're going to do a survey on revenue marketing, and this is what we mean by revenue marketing. It's the full orchestration, data-driven process of providing and supporting an ongoing digital relationship with customers and accounts across the full customer lifecycle and organization. And so when we did our survey, we explained what we meant by revenue marketing. We asked whether they understood that and whether they could relate to that and give us input around that topic. And actually, normally we survey 1,500 companies. And in this survey, we only found 1,000 out of the 1,500 who recognized or were qualified to give us input on revenue marketing. So it's a new term. It's not everybody understands it. Not everybody aspires to it yet. But we got enough information back in the survey to help us move on. The first part of the survey was those two slides you saw a moment ago. And the next part of the survey was basically where we started talking about revenue marketing and why would they like to do it, and what are the reasons for investing, and so on. At the end of the day, we finished with the reports, and this has been one of the most successful reports of Research in Action. I've been doing it for about, I don't know, I must have done about 54, 55 different vendor selection matrices over the time. But we had around 12,000 views of the report. We have a public version on the Research in Action website. That's different than when Forrester do a wave or Gartner do a Magic Quadrant. They keep the information behind their paywall and it's only available to their clients. We make a public version of the report and put it on our website, and we get a lot of viewers and readers just in that way. And then we have clients that decide to license a reprint of the report. More information gets put into that reprint, and that is the version that you as the listener to this webinar will have available coming from Acton as a reprint. Um, so looking at revenue marketing, these are the sort of following marketing processes that we want to basically cover with a platform, a complete platform. And you can imagine the old traditional marketing automation platforms from 10 years ago struggle to be able to cover this and to put this together. On the next slide, please. So I wouldn't claim that everybody is doing revenue marketing. I wouldn't even claim that everybody's doing account-based marketing. And we have a sort of concept that we put together called the maturity S-curve, where we basically take as an input how many companies in the market are doing certain things. And I've aligned these certain things, these processes, to a sort of element of maturity around the marketing automation. Right back at the bottom, if you're only doing email marketing, I would call you chaotic, because that's basics. There's a lot more you could do and should do these days. If you're only doing email blasts to cold calling, then you're probably not going to be too successful because you're annoying lots of potential buyers with that activity and that behavior. It's no longer really acceptable for the buying community. So, and that whole development goes across the whole S-curve. So I'm putting revenue marketing in the way that I described it right at the top, where at the moment, let's say around 10% are getting to that process and getting to that maturity. But of course, over time, more and more companies will be reaching for that and trying to achieve that. So that's how we use this maturity S-curve to describe that. So we did ask then in the survey, why? Why would you like to invest in revenue marketing automation? And came up with these topics. And we sort of smiled a bit when we saw email marketing at the top, because I've just sort of tried to downgrade it with a comment just a moment ago. But I think what they mean was the improve is the important word. Make it more responsive, make it more personalized, make it more contextual, stuff like that. And that's basically using data about your customers, using information that you've collected and collated about your customers and about the behavior and about their approach, that you can do email then much more effectively. It's more part of the customer engagement than it is in terms of cold calling. And then you can see some other things being listed here as well. The word consolidation comes up. And by the way, we gave in the survey, we gave 13 different options they could pick from. They could pick the top 3 drivers. And this is how this percentage, so these numbers come together. But these are the important things that we're seeing here that are motivating and driving investment in a new platform, revenue marketing automation platform. Jeff? Oh,
My apologies.
I did that on purpose just to see that, yeah.
I was trying to block out the background noise for you when I'm not talking. But this aligns very much to what we see our customers wanting to do as well. And I think you're spot on. Email is still a very important channel. It's one we can control. And at the same time, we do need to improve it. And that's things like you mentioned, how do you target better? How do you personalize that message? How do you A/B test? And then how do you understand what's working or not in your email in order to improve overall performance and engagement and deliverability, right? So all very important things. And I think as people ramp up in their maturity, they also think omni-channel, right? So at the bottom, it says adding
Yeah.
social marketing and maybe other channels to the marketing mix, again, because
Yeah.
you've got to reach the buyers where they like to consume information. And particularly if more of our customer base and buying committee is going millennial and Gen Z. They're much more social and text oriented than us Gen Xers and boomers who are more email oriented. And so adding those channels in, but also applying all the same improvement tactics that we're doing to email around personalization, segmentation, A/B testing, dynamic content, should be applied to those channels as well. So these things read very true. The other one that I have to call out because it's one of my personal favorites, like I said in my introduction, I'm an engineer. I approach marketing very much from the data standpoint, measuring our marketing ROI and performance. How do you know if it's working if you can't measure it, right? So adding that into the mix and having really good analytics, not only on like email performance or social media channel performance, but what is our IOI, what is working to drive opportunities and pipeline, what is our campaign success rates and compare different campaigns, um, apples to apples, right? So all of those things to understand what's working in marketing and how can you increase your value to the organization, to the business.
Yeah, yeah. Most CMOs are engaged with the CFOs these days and
Oh
under
yeah.
pressure to always justify each element of investment that happens, including this one. So on top of the reasons for doing it, we also asked about the objectives of the projects. And so we offered again a list of, I think it was 20 this time, 20 different options that they could choose. And they could pick the three most important objectives for their revenue management projects. And personalization, and would you believe sales and marketing alignment came out as really top of the list. And this is going to be one of the overall benefits around having a complete comprehensive revenue management platform in place, because not only will marketers be more effective and they can create adaptive and individualized buyer experiences, and feed intent signals into the sales teams' workflows, but also the sellers can be much more productive and be able to work in the one place and get all the context they need to stay focused. And combine then with this, let's say, sales enablement systems, or even AI-powered sales enablement systems, as those vendors like to talk about it now. They'll be getting guidance about how to help customers complete their journeys, know exactly what actions to take, what recommendations to make to the customers, and so on. Sales managers will be able to get insights, just like marketing executives, into return on investment and forecasts and effectiveness, right down to individual salespeople. And we have a new animal in the whole game, and that is the customer success manager. And they need systems as well to feed into, but also to use to identify where they should be working on, where they should be focusing on relationships, what elements of the relationships they can be working on. And they have their playbooks usually these days as well. But such a system that we're talking about here as revenue management platform will also help them to be much more effective. Um, RevOps is becoming, or marketing operations is becoming, an element of most larger companies these days. They need some sort of systems and reporting systems and analytics that help them to do their job. And it goes right the way through to all the different executives who want their regular reports and regular updates on what's going on and what's good and what's bad. So these are the reasons. And so you can imagine the survey. We've explained the revenue management automation. We've asked about challenges. We've asked about MAP. We've asked about ABM and so on. And then let's say we triggered this topic in their heads of the people we're interviewing. We then ask them if they know one or maybe even two vendors well enough associated with this topic. Now there could be vendors they have in-house they're using. It could be vendors they've heard about, they have a perception of, they've discussed. But we then ask them to name those vendors and to give us feedback about those vendors in this context. Now, I said there were 12,000 vendors out there at the moment offering some sort of marketing automation these days. And these 20 were named in our survey from the respondents as being relevant and being important. Now, my experience is that most companies are probably using one, two, maybe even three of these different vendors or products from these different vendors to cover what they consider to be revenue marketing automation. But it's a strong list of those vendors. And it helps with Act On because alphabetically they're top of that list and top of that table, but we'll come on to a different table in a few moments. You can see that the products came up, and this is quite a list. It's a mix. It's a mix of the classical market automation platforms, ABM solutions, data analytics, predictive analytics companies, and so on. And we then asked some very specific questions of the respondents about what they think about these vendors around different criterion listed on the next slide. We ask about the quality of service they provide. We ask about what they think of that company's vision and their go-to-market strategy. We ask about the product, the breadth and depth of the product that the vendor is offering, and so on. So a lot of different topics there. And at the end of the day, we're doing here an evaluation of a vendor where 63% is the right number. I think 63% of the evaluation is based on the survey of 1,000 business people out there around the world. And me, the analyst, I only get to influence 37% of the survey, which is basically my point of view of their go-to-market strategy, my point of view about their viability and execution. So how do they work in the market and so on. And I get that information from briefings from the vendor, from feedback from the marketplace, and my general analysis of how the different vendors are working at the moment. That's quite different, of course, to a Forrester Wave or Gartner Group Magic Quadrant, because those reports and those ratings of vendors are purely based on what the analyst thinks, purely based on what the analyst thinks after they've done an extensive, intense, and quite deep analysis, usually of the product, not the company, of the product solution. And so those pictures and those types of reports are a little bit different than the report I'm talking about here because of those reasons. 63% market-based, 37% analyst-based. So at the end of the day, with these numbers and this sort of, you can see the weighting, the 30% is the weighting when we do the calculation to make a total number. We end up with a table of the different vendors in this area. And we can see that on the next slide. It's a little bit unfair because we're not actually comparing the vendors with each other. We don't even ask in the survey people to do that, but we do get scores back. And if we add the scores together and calculate accordingly, we end up with a sort of table of companies better at the top and not so good at the bottom. Although, to be honest, if you're even down at 17, 18, you're still in the top echelon of companies. And we see the market leaders, which is the top right quadrant, if I use that word. They're all companies with a score of 4 out of 5 on average for strategy and for execution. So they're all doing well, but quite a strong list of companies. But what I do know and notice from lots of conversations is Marketo and Eloqua still there, coming down the table over the different reports. I've done this report now for about 5 times to be able to provide the sort of platform that we've been talking about here for revenue marketing. A Marketo or an Adobe sales rep, an Eloqua or an Oracle sales rep will be telling those customers, well, you can get that if you basically buy the other modules of Adobe and do the integration together with the original Marketo product, which sounds good, but it's an expensive proposition, both in the licensing side and more importantly on the resource side to do that marketing, that integration work itself. Neither Adobe nor Oracle or even the other products where you see the sort of different clouds all collected together based on purchasing other companies, they're not really in an integrated platform. They're just basically separate products with pipes between the products. So we'll see those coming down this table over the next years. I'm pretty convinced, and knowing what's not happening anymore at Marketo and Eloqua especially. But Acton is doing quite well and is getting up in this table. And we've seen progression at Acton, if I'm allowed to say that, over the last years in terms of adding functionality, addressing the areas around revenue marketing, moving on and providing more and more of a platform to its customers. It's more flexible because it's more in the mid-market and enterprise market. It's not part of that big cloud that Adobe and Oracle try to promise. And in some ways, for Jeff, it's for you much easier to satisfy your customers and move on and modernize than it is for your peers in those other companies. But congratulations on that position. And that's the end of this report. And you can get a copy of this report with this format directly from Acton as a follow-up to this webinar. The public version that we have on our website is shows this table without the names and shows an alphabetical list only of the different companies, because we don't want to display too much on a public forum. But as I said, 12,000 people looked at that report when it came out last year. I've done now 3 webinars on this report, which is a record. I've given 5 presentations internally to other vendors that are somewhere in this table, wondering why they were in that position. So it's been quite a discussion point. And we have a new survey already up and running, where some of these vendors have actually fed their own proprietary questions into the survey, which is going to be a response that only they will get back for themselves. They can use that in their market research, or maybe to generate white papers out of. And then we hope to have a new version of this report, a new version of this matrix in about 5 months' time. Okay, back to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Peter. If we could advance the slide. Yeah, so just a quick word from your sponsor. Just one slide. We are a full functioning, complete revenue marketing automation platform. We very much align with the vision that Peter has outlined in his definition, and have always strived to striven to innovate purely for the marketer. We are all about marketing. We are not a, massive portfolio company, as Peter mentioned. And so all the innovation that we do is for you, the marketer. And we, believe in the vision. And so everything we're doing is to try to help you complete this 360 view and take in all of the signals that are coming in for the marketer so that you can engage in the customer in this complete 360 life cycle, which is what we're showing here, right? So how do you track engagement from first anonymous website visit, and frankly, from all of the other data points that you collect from external systems, be they CRM, ABM, webinar platforms, or any MarTech of those. Not only 12,000, there's over 100,000 MarTech solutions on Scott Brinker's MarTech universe thing. So we connect through all of them through APIs, webhooks, and all that, bring all of that data in so that you've got the best picture of what your prospects and customers and accounts are doing. And then, as Peter mentioned, how do you target those customers very uniquely based on how they've engaged with you, who they are, what topics they're interested in, and give them personalized messages, not only through targeted segmentation, but also through pretty sophisticated personalization, email personalization, message personalization, dynamic content, dynamic website pages, landing pages. And then moving over, create automated programs, multi-channel across email, social media, SMS, web, even direct mail if you want through an integration, so that you can reach your customers where they are engaging with you, and not just the one prospect, but the whole buying committee, right? And then we move on to how do you take all that information? I love that one slide where you talked about what are the objectives. And I think the second, third, and fourth objectives were all about essentially handing off to sales. How do you qualify your leads? How do you score them? And then present them to sales with all of that information. And we have widgets, integrations with the top CRM systems, so you can provide that information where sales lives most of their time, and gives all that information. So, right, if we're creating, as marketers, if we're creating leads and we throw them over the wall, like we've really done ourselves an injustice to the quality of those leads. But if we hand them off to sales with all of that contextual information, all of the account buying committee information, all of the things and the topics that they've engaged with us, and say, here's what you should be talking about, and here's who you should be talking to, they're going to be much more successful. So this is something that we have invested in and believe very strongly in. And then, of course, the last point is the advanced reporting and optimization. As I talked about before, not only just on your channel performance, like email performance and website and social media and text and all that, and how well that's performing, but the ROI, the attribution, the funnel conversion rates, and leveraging all of that information analysis to help you perform better as a marketer and help you hone and increase your value to the organization as a whole, specifically around the ROI and the pipeline creation that you provide. So, complete platform. We could spend, and we often do spend a full half an hour with our customers going through the whole platform. So we're not going to do that today. But I did want to leave you all knowing that we are a revenue marketing automation platform, as Peter has defined, and can help you solve these problems and reach your objectives that Peter's research has identified as very important to all of you. With that, I will close as well, and we'll move to Q&A. Let me see what we have in Q&A. We can open up with a question that I think came earlier in the presentation, which, Peter, what driver in your research, driver of RMA, was most surprising to you, or that stuck out as interesting or new, or had a particular insight?
Well, as I said before, that email response was first a surprise, but I qualified it a little bit and thought, well, they're not talking about email marketing itself; they're talking about the quality of their email marketing. It still makes sense. It's still the most used channel. It's now matured that it's actually a conversational channel, as opposed, or it should be a conversational channel, an engagement channel, as opposed to just a channel to generate leads or generate cold calls. But there's still a lot of companies out there at the moment that are interested only in lead generation, and there are products out there that do nothing but lead generation, which is basically just filling out a form to confirm the proper telephone number, the proper email address for contacts at a certain account. So a lot of companies are still at that phase, in that basic phase.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Here's a pretty good question that I might have queued up unknowingly at the beginning, but question is, we mentioned AI, and it's clearly a very big buzz topic today. How does IA fit into all of this? How does IA fit into revenue marketing automation?
Well, you're going to start to see AI being used for a lot of the analytics phases, for scoring, for personalization, content personalization. It should probably improve the whole segmentation process for many companies, and improve that. And I'll start to see it probably as well around the attribution area. Attribution started off as a sort of guesswork. There were religious types of attribution systems that people were talking about or arguing about for a long time. Should we spread the 100% across the whole funnel, or should we just spread the 100% across the different channels, and so on and so on? Those were the basics people started with. I think AI will now help to maybe do attribution much more effectively, based on the experience that system will collect over time.
That's great. I hope
And of
so.
course, the
That is
classics are generating content and that sort of stuff, which of course is probably where AI has firstly been using marketing.
Yeah. That's good insight, and I can speak for the purpose of Acton and our vision for AI and how we're thinking about it categorically in the roadmap, which is really starting, I'm shooting from my hip and remembering my own slides here, but we're really starting with the content creation. We have AI create, and everybody, every marketer should be leveraging this for content creation today. Then we're thinking about agentic applications. So how do we orchestrate some of the things that we do through AI and just make it easier and smarter and more, well, less error prone? In terms of like, hey, I want to set up a webinar. Let's have an AI-driven approach to that so you can get it done 10x faster. Then we're thinking about many of the analytical capabilities. We already have AI insights in our platform, and natural language processing to help guide you through the advanced analytical process. But there's so much more we could do today. And Peter mentioned one of them around the attribution modeling, which I would be super excited to do and have at my fingertips. Um, and then there's a lot of the sort of data management stuff that all of us marketers fight with, just keeping clean data and categorized data and removing duplicates and all of that stuff. And I think we've got um, a lot we can do there. So that's how we're thinking about it as a product organization. But I think the top message is AI will impact everything that we do. And we're going to bake it right into the system here at Acton. And I encourage all marketers out there to dive deep into the Gen AI tools and start playing with it on the content creation and custom GPTs and all that, because this market is taking off and there's a lot of value to be had there. Let me see, we're just past time. Was one other questions from the listeners. As some of the leading marketing automation platforms like Unica, Clever, MoEngage were not part of the Matrix report.
Yeah, I can
I
talk to
got.
that.
Oh yeah,
The question was basically, is this B2B only? Um,
yeah, I missed the first half
I
of that
steer
question.
that
Sorry.
I steer that sometimes in the survey, in that I specify which industries we'd like to survey. So we have a survey house and they do the work for us, and we give them basically parameters. This is the geographic split we'd like. Please ensure that we have that split. And this is the industry split that we'd like, and please ensure that we have that split of industries. And they start off with a panel of around, I think, 10,000 business people that they collect on an ongoing basis.
Mhm.
So I did for this report, because marketing and lead management is primarily a B2B world. ABM is definitely a B2B world. I did steer the industry lists to be primarily B2B. I
There
do
you
other
go.
reports where it's a mix, but that depends on the topic.
Good. Well, we're 3 minutes over our scheduled time at this point. Peter, thank you for staying a little bit longer, and thank everyone online for staying a little bit longer in your engagement. If we didn't get to your question, please feel free to reach out to us at Acton or Peter Neal at Research in Action. And of course, you can find more information on Acton. You can pick up this report, our AI plans at acton.com. That's act-on.com. And otherwise, have a fantastic day and week. Thank you very much, everyone.